Well, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, Remote Workforce for the Back Office. We want to keep this pretty informative for you today, and I have a number of my colleagues will be joining me to share some experiences with our customers and talk about what all it takes to operate a remote workforce for your back office processes. My name is Jim O'Rourke, and I'm on the business development side of the house here at ICG Consulting, and I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues.
My name is Lynn Fern. I'm on the business side, which really means that I work with project managers and business analysts to figure out what customers need and to help bring the projects in on time and on budget.
And I'm Shawna Summers, and I also work on the business side with Lynn Fern and help identify those requirements and work closely with all of our customers.
Well, thank you. So just, I'm sure some of you are not very familiar with ICG, so just a little bit about us before we get going. We're a solutions developer, systems integrator, and consultant, and that says a lot of things, but really what we do is we bring solutions to the table for our customers, help really configure those solutions to fit their specific needs. It's not an out-of-the-box solution, but nor is it a, build custom from the ground up. So all of our solutions are probably 80–90% there. And that last little bit is coming in and working with you and understanding your environment and making those solutions fit to solve your business problems, as well as integrate with whatever systems you have. And to the extent you need any help with best practices or any kind of consulting help, certainly we're there for that as well. We've been around since 1990. We're based in Arizona, but we're nationwide in scope. We have employees scattered throughout the country. Most of us work remote, which is apropos of the subject matter today. Our focus is strictly financial back office, AP, vendor management, procurement, etc. So all of our focus and has been for the life of the company is we really focus on the back office, and we know that business well. And you can see a number of names here on a diverse client base. I won't go through them, but as you can see, we actually tackle business problems for customers in a number of solutions and companies, generally large, medium-sized companies. So we have a lot of experience in the back office, very flexible, as I think you'll see as we go through some of the material today, an extensive experience, I think, between the three people you have talking today. I think I'm the junior one of us, and I'm working on my 19th year. So we've all been around for quite a while in this business. So, subject matter today, a remote workforce for the back office. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the pandemic. But one of the things that's really changed, and I think you'll all note that, is how and where people work in their professional lives has become a big issue. And a lot of people were forced really to go into remote operations by the pandemic, without any choice. But coming out of it, or hopefully coming out of it, companies are really starting to evaluate. So is it a hybrid? Is it remote operations? Whatever it is, those different workforce configurations are here to stay. And our goal here at ICG is to be able to serve our customers and our future customers in whatever format that they wind up in. So Lynn, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you talk for a little while.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm going to start off and talk about what are the key factors for the successful remote workforce. When the pandemic first started, everybody was forced to go remote. And so really it was, what is the bare minimum needed to get people working? But now that we're working our way through the pandemic, companies are coming back and they're saying, maybe we don't all need to be in the same place. Maybe it's better for people to be in a hybrid situation where they work remotely some of the time, and maybe some of the time they go into the office, or maybe there's a complete remote situation. But now it's going to be important, if this is truly the new normal, to make sure that your remote workforce is as positive of an experience as possible for everyone, making sure that the productivity is there and making sure that the employees are happy and making sure that the quality of the work being performed is really where it needs to be. And that's really going to be our focus. So the three key factors are, the first one is making sure that the right technology is there, making sure that you're putting the tools in the hands of the people so that they can do their job no matter where they are, knowing that they may be a few different places. Maybe they're at home, maybe they're in the office, or maybe they're at that cabin in the woods. The second piece is making sure that you shift the concept of management. We need to make sure that from a management perspective, we're supporting people in an ever-changing environment. One of the things that we have learned in the past year and a half is that things change on a dime. And while we may all know that business conditions change, they can change very rapidly, and the concept of management needs to change with it. The last piece is making sure you have a solution partner that works with you, that understands who you are as a company, your culture, who the people are, the target business process, and making sure that we can fold all that together into the right technology for you. So first we'll talk about the technology. And technology is typically broken into two different pieces. You have the hardware and then you have the software. So starting off with the hardware, making sure that your team has the right laptop or desktop. Obviously that's critical. Making sure they have the monitors and the right monitors to do their jobs. In some instances, we see people that have 2 or 3 monitors in order to perform their job. People need to make sure they have headphones, and it's all these things. It's keyboards and making sure they have a mouse that works. And while that's something that's inherently easy in an office situation, sometimes you lose sight of that as a person goes remote. One of the next pieces is making sure that the phone calls that would normally have come into someone's desk phone, that those are rerouted as needed. Lastly, need to make sure that the person who is working remote can access the computing resources. So whether that's through a VPN for those on-prem resources like an ERP, or access to cloud-based computing services to make sure that again, they have access to the tools they need to perform their job. Now, shifting towards software. Software, again, very large bucket, but it first starts and it leads off with the tools that are needed to make sure that the communication is where it needs to be for collaboration and instant messaging. So things like Slack or Skype, Microsoft Teams, which offers up, and I'm not trying to advertise Microsoft or any particular product or anything, but making sure that they have tools just like that to enable the conversation that's a quick question to be using the real-time communication or instant messaging, but also the tools to enable Zoom meetings with video or GoToMeeting. Those are critical to make sure that your team as a whole continues their communications. The next big bucket is providing technologies that actually help each person do their job as a part of the business process. So providing workflows and portals. And that can start off from making sure that the invoices are captured. So whether they come in through EDI or they come in through email, or even if they come in through the mail, making sure that your tool allows those invoices to be captured, both the invoice itself and the data. Feeding into that or feeding over next is the ability to have AP workflows. So making sure that once those invoices come in, if they're non-PO, that they can be routed around for approvals. Or if they're PO based, making sure that the technology is there to support three-way matching and any discrepancy processing that has to occur. The next piece of the technology are really the portals to allow vendors to have self-service so that they can, instead of sending you emails, they can come in and look up the status of an invoice, or maybe they can send their invoices in through the portal. Perhaps they can submit a dispute. They can even onboard, but making sure again that through the technology, everyone has the capability to access any of that operational solution that's needed in order to process invoices and get those payments out the door. The last piece here is once you have that operational technology in place, a big portion of that is making sure that that system gives you the reports and the dashboards needed to establish KPIs to make sure that everyone on your team understands what's expected of them. I'd like to introduce Matt Mitchell. Matt is the Vice President of Financial Shared Services at Boyd Gaming. For those of you who don't know, Boyd is one of the largest casino entertainment businesses in the U.S. with over 28 properties in 10 states. Matt, first, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us. To kind of get things started, can you explain at a high level the areas serviced by the FSSC in your specific role?
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for having me. So our Financial Shared Services Center covers all of the accounting functions for the properties that Lynn just mentioned, the 28 properties across the nation. So we cover things such as general ledger, payroll, accounts receivable. We do the revenue audit. We do taxes, and we also do accounts payable, which is what brought me here today.
Awesome, thanks. And as backdrop, everything with we're here to talk about COVID and what the impact was to your business. Everything happened so quickly. I remember 1 minute walking through an airport, everything was normal, and the next everything had changed. People couldn't be together anymore for work or for play. The gaming industry was hit very hard and very quickly at that, and most companies had significant layoffs. And I know with you all, layoffs in AP and the property caused a big disruption to the AP process. And so to kind of kick things off, what factors did you and the other FSSC management consider when deciding what operations were going to look like during the initial stages of the COVID shutdown?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you mentioned, it happened so quickly. And if you think about the gaming industry and where we operate, things that COVID attacked was everything that made the gaming industry special. The large gatherings, the getting together in person, things of that nature. So we were definitely impacted very hard, especially in the beginning. Every one of our businesses completely shuttered. And so, in thinking about AP operations during that time period, it was, that became one of the critical factors for us. You think about payroll and AP were the two key functions for our company at that time, from a finance standpoint, I should say, or clarify. And so, really understanding what our AP goals were going to be during the shutdown. Rewinding back to a little over a year ago, we didn't know what the future held for gaming, and so you mentioned layoffs, things like that. That came at a later date. Initially, we took the stance, like many companies, of furloughing our AP staff during that time period and just keeping on the critical folks that could keep our function up and running during the closure period before we got to the ramp up when we started opening properties again in the summer of 2020.
Gotcha. Thanks. How did you communicate your strategies to your team, to that AP team and to others within the FSSC?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, there's a lot of tough conversations. Definitely, it was our strategy as far as getting through the closure period, or the closure of the properties, and getting to the point of reopening. That was really done with myself and the leadership team of accounts payable. As far as the rest of the team, it was one-on-one conversations and really heartfelt conversations to make sure they were okay and taken care of during that time period. And we really had a team member first focus, and that was the crux of the communications with them. As we transitioned to getting to a spot a few months later where we had an outlook of when the properties were going to be reopening and what that reopening looked like. That's when myself and the leadership team got together and really mapped out what the future of AP was going to look like in this in the initial stages of the post-COVID world. And that's where we got with each of the team members to talk through what the strategy was as far as bringing them back online and getting going from a full functioning AP standpoint.
Was your transition from centralized department to remote gradual, or did you take immediate action? I remember some of it, but honestly, not a lot of it.
Yeah. It's a time period we'd like to forget sometimes, Lynn. But no, it was definitely immediate. I remember, vividly some of the conversations, and it was within a matter of about 3 days, all of our properties across the company were shut down. Us, the Shared Services Center being located here in Southern Nevada, we were following the local health guidance, and so we immediately took action to shut down our corporate office when we got notification to do so. So it was an immediate shutdown of our AP function in our corporate office from a physical standpoint. that's when we went to, some of the early stages that I talked about earlier. But as we got into the summertime period and really started getting our properties reopened and getting back to operations, that's when we were able to kind of more gradually get back into the AP space. And by gradual, I'm talking days, not weeks or months in that phase. So all things are a matter of perspective, I guess. But yeah, it was really a ramp up from kind of a very, very small core team during the property closures, because you got to remember that our operations weren't up and running, so we didn't have new invoices coming in for things crossing the dock because the dock wasn't open, and so we had to kind of quickly ramp up to get bills paid and get product ordered in order to be ready for our properties to reopen. And so that's where that happened over the early summertime period.
Gotcha. From a technology perspective, were you people in a position to make the transition to remote easily, or did the company need to provide support and infrastructure there?
I would say a little bit of both. So overall, we had to provide some structure and some infrastructure associated with that. We had some remote work technology available, but it wasn't broadly spread out throughout the enterprise. So our IT departments did a great job ramping that up and getting everybody with the tools they needed to work remotely. With respect to accounts payable, the tool that we developed with your assistance, it's dubbed Mercury for our internal purposes, but so the Mercury tool that we have, with it being a cloud-based tool, that was a savior during this time period, because it allowed anybody with internet access to go in and process our invoices on our team with ease without having to utilize the infrastructure that was provided by the company. Because during those early days, it was really trying to ramp up, and it was kind of shaky at certain points.
I remember, with people, being furloughed at the properties and the properties shutting down, you guys had massive changes to your approval hierarchies. And I don't think that there were much more customizations than that to Mercury in order to support this. But can you kind of walk through, how some of the changes within Mercury were needed to support what you were doing, but, kind of what that level of change was?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, you're correct. There wasn't really changes to the underlying technology of Mercury for purposes of routing and getting our invoices paid. But you hit the nail on the head. The big thing we needed to do is quickly adjust the approval hierarchies across the enterprise. Because we had for each specific department and each specific company different approval routing hierarchies set up. And so when the folks that were set up in those hierarchies went on furlough because of the properties being shut down, we had some senior level management at each of the properties that needed to start doing that approval. So we needed to quickly shift and point it directly to specific individuals across the enterprise. And that was able to be done in a matter of a couple of days, because of the tool, the Mercury tool that we had. The team was able to go in and just update that all right away. And so that was necessary, because otherwise invoices would have been stuck with folks that didn't have the access to approve it any longer. So that was great for us to be able to do that so quickly. And then as properties came back online, we're able to make those adjustments accordingly with whatever their new mode of operation was set up as.
Great. I do remember those fun times. Kind of moving to a slightly different topic. Accounts payable operations generally require a fair amount of supervision to ensure that work's getting done consistently, employees are productive. How do you guys monitor and supervise quality and productivity given this new remote scenario?
Yeah, quite ironically and really unintended, the steps that we had made in the years leading up to 2020 to get Mercury in place and get some of the reporting, and we were really we're really on a push to get metrics in place and some KPIs for AP in general. Because if I take a step back during the time period leading up to 2020, if you think of AP, it's very transactional in nature, and so it's a very easy area to set some of these KPIs up, and so whether you're successful or not on an individual basis as well as an overall departmental basis. And so, quite unintended, some of those things really ended up helping us a lot and allowed us to go to remote work and allowed us to be successful and know what the team was doing, and know if we were hitting the marks that we needed to hit and the KPIs that we needed to hit during the closure period and being remote, because I can go in at any point in time and see exactly what John or Jane Doe did on the team, and we're able to set those targets for them as far as daily average invoices processed or whatever their metric is for their specific job duty. That really allowed us to keep an eye on that during the remote work, and quite frankly has allowed the AP team to stay remote to this day and be just as successful, if not more successful, than they were when they were physically on site.
That's great news. Do you feel like your service levels to your vendors have been impacted? It doesn't sound like it, but by having a remote workforce, have they been impacted in any way?
I would tend to believe no. My litmus test for that is how many vendors reach out to me personally, and that hasn't increased. So I would tend to think that we're hitting the mark pretty well on that. One of the things that we knew we needed during this time period was to ensure our customer service team was up and running. So we made sure they had the telephone technology at home that they always had here in the office. Those numbers didn't change. The way they were reached by the vendors didn't change. We had gone to an email box system that we had conditioned our vendors over a period of time to utilize. It worked out very well. And so that was really unchanged from their perspective as well. And the fact that we're able to monitor our performance and stay on top of our performance to the levels we were pre-COVID has been great. Going forward, we're looking at future technologies with ICG as far as how vendors can gain access in a more self-service manner to their invoices and the status of their invoices, and that's only going to continue to help with that.
We're looking forward to that too.
Yeah.
So kind of to wrap things up, do you have any helpful hints or words of wisdom to share with those who are listening as they try to either manage a remote operation or consider a permanent move to remote?
Yeah, definitely. So the two things really come to mind, and I mentioned them throughout the course of our discussion here, but the first is setting KPIs and making sure that the team is bought into those KPIs. So and do that early so that you can work with them, you can refine it. As we started doing that early on, we set them, and the team knew it was an initial phase, and that we're going to refine those KPIs over the course of time. And then we've gotten to a point now where the team knows what they are, they agree with them, they know they're achievable, and that really helps us to manage the team, and so that they also know on an individual basis whether they've been successful during the course of that day or week or month. So without that, especially in a remote environment where you don't get that on-site feedback directly from your team or your peers or your supervisor walking by and letting you know how you're doing, if you're just sitting at home by yourself, really having those KPIs let you know when you log off at the end of the day, whether you did it or not, whether you hit that mark or whether you were successful. So I think that's been really great. So I would encourage anybody that's considering that transition or in that phase right now, but maybe looking to refine it to make sure you set whatever KPIs are necessary for your teams. And then lastly, bite the bullet and go to the cloud. So this tool in particular, our AP tool is in the cloud, and there's some trepidation early on. I know sometimes organizations making that jump to the cloud. There's a lot of things to consider. From my perspective and for this tool in particular, it is really what saved us. So like I mentioned earlier, the transition to remote work and some of the infrastructure we had set up, while our IT team did a fantastic job, there were still some issues during that time period. And whatever issues we faced with that, we could always jump over and get on the Mercury website and continue working and continue processing our invoices as needed. So that really allowed us to continue the work in AP without interruption.
Well, great. Thank you again so much for your time, Matt. We really, really appreciate it, and looking forward to more adventures in the future.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, great. That information obviously very valuable. So to kind of tie into that, we're going to show you a little bit of really focusing on the KPIs and some of those things that Matt talked about that they're doing at Boyd using our ICG solution. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shawna Summers, who's going to do a demonstration and show you visually some of the things we're doing out there and how they track employee performance and how they display some of those KPIs. Shawna?
Thanks, Jim. All right, just a quick heads up for everybody. This is actually a test environment that we have out there at Boyd. So some of the numbers and data that you see is probably not realistic, but it definitely shows the concepts of both what Matt was talking about and kind of what we wanted to highlight here today. As a quick overview, what we did with Boyd is we implemented a back office AP workflow that handles non-PO invoices, PO, BPO items. We get invoices a variety of ways. We get electronic invoices, EDI invoices, we get paper invoices, and everything comes through our system and basically flows electronically, whether it needs approvals, if there's any kind of exceptions or things that require users to look at invoices before they can get paid. And then they route onto their ERP for the final payment. So the first thing I wanted to kind of show you guys is what Boyd and what we implemented for Boyd as a landing page or a dashboard here. We have very specific queue counts for all the different queues that are out there at Boyd. What I'm showing you today kind of focuses on the non-PO side of life, but this is a great way for management to be able to log on and quickly see where the queue counts are for the day. So maybe we want to come in, especially as management, I don't actually process the invoices, but I want to see what's out there. So say our rescan queue, these are items that we didn't quite get the great image. So our goal is to get this down to 0 every day. So this may be a number that I'm kind of watching throughout the day. Every time I come to our landing page, this number would automatically refresh for me so I can kind of keep track of where my people are processing. One of the very important things to Boyd was bulletins and sort of reminders or actually even kudos for their employees. This area will allow the Boyd management team to actually set up notifications. We can set it up based on a group of users. We could even go specific individual basis. So here, we're going to give kudos to Leslie. Maybe she's been our top processor for the week. And we just really want to highlight, since we don't have that personal interaction with Leslie, we can at least give her public acknowledgement that everybody can see that, hey, Leslie's doing a great job today. A reminder to your buyers, it's different than being able to be in the office and quickly walk by those guys and say, hey, don't forget you have a couple items out there in your queue that you need to process. These may be guys who aren't in here all the time. So just, any kind of reminder that you have out there. You could even do things where, hey, we have a great system upgrade coming in 2 weeks. So just as a reminder, next Wednesday after 5 p.m., the system may be down for about 5 minutes while we give you guys these great enhancements. So that's just kind of looking at the dashboard, and it really is more of a managerial tool. It also helps your employees look to see, maybe I'm processing the non-PO review. So these are all of our exceptions. And maybe it's, Leslie and Nick and Jim who normally do the processing. But if I'm out there and I can see that this queue count has gotten very, very large, and if I have some free time in my day, I can jump in and go ahead and help those guys process some of the invoices. So it definitely helps with your cross-pollination of, job sharing and things like that. All right, we are now going to switch over to some of the reporting capabilities that we have. Okay, so the first report that I wanted to show you guys is our capture productivity report. So this is really how we are getting invoices into the system. We have a variety of ways that you can actually get at this data. We have some graphs here. We're going to go ahead and just run this for invoices that we received in the last 30 days. And then we can start to see, you know, our differences between our non-PO items, our PO invoices, maybe ones that have come in and we haven't actually identified what type of invoice this is yet. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the productivity reports. These are a little bit more in line with what Matt was just speaking about. This is really focused on those AP processors and what they're doing on a daily basis. Like I said, we are actually looking at a test environment, so these queue counts are pretty low. But just for a frame of reference, I wanted to actually pull up a report that was generated out of their production system, just to give you guys a better look of what's going on here. Their Hootie queue is actually where those processors are applying all the header and GL data to an invoice. So you can see if they're processing 200 to 400 invoices a day, that is a very, very high queue count. And that's from some of the ease of what we've implemented in the system and some of the lookups and tools that we've implemented for them. We could change this and maybe look at their non-PO review queue. So this is that queue that handles all the exceptions and maybe questions with invoices, potential duplicates, things that basically needed a pit stop before it routed to the approver and ultimately to their ERP system to be paid. So again, they're averaging about 150 to 300 invoices per day in this queue alone. It just really highlights how effective these users are, even at home, even without that daily supervision of somebody walking by their desk and constantly saying, how many have you done? How many have you done? Are you okay? Are you processing? Things like that. So kind of taking those numbers into your head for a real world situation, we're going to look at their test system. So in here, we have the ability to run these reports all different ways. Just looking at the non-PO review queue, just like we just did in production, we can filter this down and we now can start to see, okay, how many did somebody do on a daily basis? What was our average done across the board? And what's that differential? So this is where we can start to apply KPIs for the actual department. So we can take our top performers and really start to adjust our numbers based on what those guys can do, because we know that everybody else should be able to do this as well. We may have somebody like Nick, who we know is a new employee. He's really getting used to our process. He's getting used to our system. So his KPIs are going to be lower on an individual basis. But we know that that's somebody over time we're going to be working with him. And we hope that at some day he gets up to the Leslie level of the, you know, the higher time performing kind of employee. And then moving on, so now that we have looked at sort of the overall averages and kind of looked at what people are doing compared to each other, we can now focus in on specific users or those actual details. Because even though Leslie was that great performer and she had the high number of invoices processed, we want to make sure she's actually processing that. She's just not deleting these out of the queues in order to get her performance numbers up. So from here, we can see she actually processed them out of the review queue and got them to the approval queue. So she did whatever she needed to do to get these on to the approver. If she was just deleting these out of the workflow, that would dramatically change her numbers, and we would be able to tell that. This is a great way to be able to see that users are actually doing what they need to do at home, and they're not just kind of winging it or, you know, not actually processing throughout the day. Now we're going to move over to their aging report. So this lets us know really where everything is in the entire workflow system. Again, we can be looking at our PO items, our non-PO items. We can be looking at everything if we like. But again, today we're just kind of focusing on some of those non-PO items. So from here, I'm looking for all my non-PO items in that exception queue. And from here, I want to see how many items are still out there that have been there longer than a day. Our goal for this queue is to get those invoices in and out within a day. So from here, we can see that we're actually tracking pretty good. We only have 3 items out there. that have been there longer than our day. So they are meeting our company goal. If I remove this filter and come back and look at our items and review, we can also get another sense. So we can now look and see, which kind of invoices types are out there. Maybe our queue entry dates, how long have these things actually been out there? And we can start to see some more critical details. From here, we can also download this report to Excel if we need to do further processing or analysis. Maybe we want to look at why the invoices are out there. Maybe they're a certain location that has to be out there. Maybe they're for a particular vendor. There's all sorts of different analysis we can do once we get this information into Excel. So it's really everything that you're seeing on screen, but you are now have the ability to slice and dice it as needed. The next thing that we can do on the aging report is maybe change our queue to our approval queue. So we've kind of focused on our AP staff and making sure that they're doing what they need to do, but now we want to kind of help out those approvers. So these are the guys who maybe never even were in the office prior to COVID, and they're definitely not in the office now. But those guys are critical to getting these invoices paid so that we make sure our vendors are happy and everything flows through the system correctly. So from here, we're going to just look at what's out there. Again, we can look at how long things have been in different queues. We can also start to see who is the approver. So if we need to reach out to Sophia specifically, we can do that because we know that these items are actually sitting in her approval queue, and maybe she needs a nudge. Even though our system automatically sends out emails to the approvers, maybe sometimes they just need that little personal touch that says, hey, Sophia, I know you're really busy. I know your job's very important, but if you could go ahead and approve this invoices, everybody would really appreciate that. Again, you can download, do what you need to with this item as well. So these are just some of the reports that we have implemented with Boyd that really have helped with their KPIs, and not only from a system perspective, but it also helps, set personal goals and as well as department goals.
Thanks, Shawna. Now getting back to the aspects of a successful remote workforce, the middle piece here is shifting the concept of management. And really that breaks down into, 7 or 8 different areas. First one is making sure that you've established rules of engagement for everyone. And these rules of engagement are things like, when are people expected to work? When is it okay to Slack someone? Or when is it okay to call them? So making sure that everyone understands what's acceptable, because we all know when we work at home, the concept of working 8 to 5, that gets a little fuzzy. So making sure that for the group and individuals, you establish what those rules are. Next one, which is really critical, is making sure you focus on outcomes and not the process. So as Matt mentioned and as Shawna was showing, KPIs are the outcomes, making sure that people understand this is what's expected of you. Maybe don't focus so much on how they get there, but make sure that they meet those goals. Next one is be flexible. Again, you never know what's happening in someone's work environment when they're at home. So you need to be flexible. Maybe they're not right there to answer your Slack. Maybe they're not available when you get that call. Give them a little leeway and be flexible in what you're expecting of them from a timing perspective. Management really needs to remove roadblocks. It's one of the biggest things that managers can and need to do. When a person is struggling either with the technology or struggling with the software or struggling getting approvers to do their thing, that's a part of management, is to step in and make sure that the folks who are on the ground doing the processing can have a clear path to getting their jobs done. Next one is really to show empathy. Again, and I mentioned this earlier, you never know what's happening in somebody's home at a particular time. You don't know if there's kids at home. You don't know if there's a parent that needs to be taken care of. But showing empathy and making sure that you understand that that folks at home have other responsibilities. And again, that leads back into the being flexible and focusing on the outcomes and not the process. It's really important throughout the day, to the next point, to encourage time away from the keyboard. I know for myself, I can sit for 5 or 6 hours straight and not leave. that's just not good. So encourage people to get up, walk around, take a break. Maybe when they're on a phone call, at least step away and walk away. But really take that lunch break. That's really critical in making sure that your folks' productivity and their happiness maintains those levels that everybody's aiming for. One of the biggest things about the shifting concept of management is, instead of being a manager, be a mentor. And really, when we're talking about mentoring, is making sure that you're bringing people through the process and up through management, helping them to be able to do simple things like communicate with vendors by sending emails, making sure that they're able to work with their peers and work through different sorts of harder conversations or harder relationships. But again, making sure that you establish and work with your folks to build them up, as opposed to just continuing to make sure that they can process those invoices over and over and over again. The last one, which is I know one that's impacted me, is making sure that you preserve a sense of community with your team. I know that when I haven't been in an office setting, I kind of lose touch and lose that close relationship with the team that I work with. So it's really important as managers to make sure to take time every week to preserve that sense of community. Maybe that's making sure that you have one-on-ones with your employees, or making sure that as a group, a team, a project team, or a group of processors, that you take the time to meet and not just talk about the process, but talk about other things, whatever those might be. And make sure that, a lot of people don't like to use their cameras, but it's important to see people. It's important to see what facial expressions. Here at ICG, we do webcam Wednesdays. And I think that that's really helped us get through all of this, because, when COVID hit, you lose that closeness, you lose that ability to walk up to somebody and just have a quick conversation with them about nothing or about something, and be there physically with them. So that last one is as important as the first in this list of things. But again, making that shift of what management is and does is really critical to the success of maintaining productivity, maintaining the quality of the work done, and most importantly, making sure that your folks are happy as they're doing their jobs day in and day out.
Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. Very insightful, and I think a lot of the themes that you hit on there will be talked about a great deal as we introduce our next guest.
All right, so I in turn would like to introduce Missy Holland. Missy is the Senior Accounts Payable Manager at Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores. Love's is the nation's leading travel stop network with over 560 locations in 41 states. That presents quite a fun time for Misty. They are family owned and operated with over 32,000 employees, offering a multitude of services for professional truck drivers and motorists. So first, Misty, thank you so much for spending time with us. We know you're busy. We know your group handles a vast array of transactions for Love's. To get things started, can you explain at a high level the areas your department covers for Love's and your specific role?
My department is responsible for all disbursements for Love's and the Love's family of companies, which right now is about 38 different companies. So we handle all the disbursements for that. Specifically, invoice processing, we do corporate type invoices, we do procure to pay, which are PO-based invoices. We manage all of the utility bills, we manage expense reports, we manage purchase cards, we manage where we have some warehouse and retread plants, we manage all of the invoice processing for those, as well as our tire shops out in the field. And then we also manage some store invoicing that comes in that we audit. I mean, there's a whole array of things that we do, but that pretty much covers the majority of what we do.
So what you're saying is you have a lot of extra time on your hands.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, we want to focus today on the impact that COVID had on your operations, just, and how quickly everything happened and how your group adjusted. Some industries were really impacted by COVID. They shut down, they stopped, but yours kept right on going because, your travel stops and trucking still had to continue on. So you had to deal with all the changes and maintain your productivity. So I guess to start things out, what factors did you and your management consider when deciding what your AP was going to look like when all this started happening, these initial stages of COVID?
Well, Lynn, we were really fortunate because we were already probably 90 to 95% paperless in my department. So we were already receiving the majority of our invoices electronically, either by PDF or other electronic means, file downloads, and that kind of stuff. We were putting them in our workflow system and processing them electronically already. So we had a leg up on the majority of probably some of the other companies, and we had worked really, really hard to get to that point. So we weren't too worried about that portion, and it worked really well for us. Unfortunately, the thing that we did have to worry about was that most of my staff, 35 payable clerks, only had desktops. They didn't have laptops. So that was our number one concern when we decided to shut down.
Gotcha. And I mean, all of that was happening so suddenly. I mean, how did you communicate? How did you communicate what the strategy was going to be, or how you were going to get everybody their equipment or whatever was needed to then quickly pivot and continue your operations?
So our IT department did a fantastic job. They had made an arrangement with Dell months ago where we had purchased laptops or pieces of equipment that actually Dell stored for us in their warehouse, and we just pulled inventory when we needed it. So we got out of here. We got out of this building in 48 hours.
Oh,
so every single one of my employees had a laptop. That didn't have a laptop had a laptop. They took their monitors home because we allow them to use 2 big monitors. And they took their equipment home, and off they went and had VPN sign-ins, and it was a blink of an eye for us.
That's incredible.
We were up and running.
I mean, you talked a little bit about this already, but so can you talk a little bit about how your AP applications were able to adapt to the new remote workforce? It was just kind of a matter of the equipment and VPN, or did we? I mean, were there other customizations that had to be made or changes to applications to require it, or was it really that seamless?
It was seriously that seamless for us. We were already. We have 2 different situations. We have part of ours is what we call on-prem, and then our P-card and expense reporting application sits on the cloud. So there was nothing to do with the on-cloud application. It continued on just as if nothing had ever happened. Our on-prem application continued as well as if nothing had ever happened, with the exception that we still had to have someone come up here and open mail for those people who have not gone paperless or started emailing us PDF documents. So I did have 2 girls that stayed in office. One girl would come in every day and open mail and prep it and scan it. And the other girl, of course, we are not completely checklist yet. We're working on getting checklists where we're not going to print checks anymore. So we had to come up and print checks every day. But that was 2 people out of 4,000 in the office that had to be here every day.
Gotcha. That's impressive. So when everybody is there in the office, accounts payable operations usually take a fair amount of supervision to make sure that everybody's getting their work done, employees are productive. How have you been able to monitor and supervise quality and productivity given that remote scenario?
So even before we left for COVID, we run what we call KPIs, or key performance indicators, and we run them every week. And me and my senior staff, we review them every week to look to see exactly how the clericals are performing. So we know, based on some reports that are built in my workflow system, I know how many items were touched in a week and by who, and exactly what items they touched, and what they did with them. So they either completed them, routed them out, sent them to an exception queue. I mean, I can tell exactly what they're doing every day. So probably the only thing that changed in that scenario is I was really hyper vigilant about watching it on a daily basis instead of a weekly basis. And one of the things that we had to adjust to, which the reporting made it really easy for us, is now you have your entire workforce working from home, which is a new situation for them, right? They've got husbands or spouses or children or parents or whatever living in their house with them. So it's not an uninterrupted type of workforce. So we were able to allow our staff to work at their schedule. For example, we have a girl that works for us, and she's one of our really good employees, but she has a 2-year-old at home who's no longer going to daycare and is under her feet and wants a snack every 15 minutes. So she actually changed her schedule to work like 2 or 3 hours in the morning, then get him up, work with him. When he went down for naps, he got back on and worked 2 hours, got back up. I mean, so she did these 2-hour stints all day long so that she could get her 8 hours in. But we were able to run those KPIs and see that she was still performing or processing, being as productive as she was in the office. It's just now it's different time frames that she's being productive in, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, and that's a great testament to you guys and allowing flexibility and allowing those folks at home who do have, it's a different way to work, but it's probably the way that people are going to work in the future. Which actually, my next question is, I mean, so now here we are, where the world is opening back up. Are you guys going to go 100% back to the office? Are you going to keep people remote? Are you going to do a hybrid schedule? What sort of adjustments are you going to make now?
We have decided, our upper management has been very lenient with us, and they're allowing the managers of every department to make that decision on their own. I see working from home as a huge benefit to my staff. They are probably some of the lowest paid employees in the company, clerical associates, and being able to stay at home and wear sweatpants or be with your family is a huge benefit for them. It's a huge benefit for them. So we have taken the hybrid approach, and I am requiring 3 days in office full time, 3 days a week, and 2 days at home, and they get to pick their 2 days. Of course, everybody wants off Fridays and Mondays, always. So what I have done is my salaried staff, they only get 1 day off a week, and they get to pick, and we have taken turns on who gets a Friday and a Monday. That way our office is actually covered. Or if somebody needs us, somebody senior will be here in the office.
Gotcha. I'm sure everybody in your department appreciates that flexibility.
Yeah, hope so.
Yeah. Do you feel like your service levels to your vendors have been impacted at all? Or are they still receiving, responses and payments, and is everything still on track?
I think everything is still on track. We don't receive late notices. We're still getting our statements. We were able to do statement reviews. The only thing that we truly struggled with, that was really a struggle for us, is our vendor master data group, who has to set up our suppliers to be paid, and we require that they do verbal confirmation on banking information. And that was a real struggle for us because nobody's working in the office, right? So we would call and call and call and call and not get any return calls. So we were unable to verbally confirm banking details before we set somebody up in our system as a new supplier. And that was our really our only struggle.
Gotcha. So I guess, do you have any helpful hints or words of wisdoms to share with people who may be listening, who are either trying to manage a remote operation still or considering a permanent move to remote? Any suggestions you have for them?
So one of the things that I did for my group, um, you will we lost what I felt like we lost was the connection. You know, the hi, how was your night? What TV did you watch last night? You know, what'd you have for dinner? That whole personal aspect of actually working in an office and building a relationship with someone that's not just strictly work based. So what we did is we had meetings once a week with my entire staff, and I did different segments. So I did different groups at a time, and when we had Zoom meetings or team meetings where we could actually see their faces. I required that they turn their cameras on when they were on, and we would have schedule a 30-minute meeting. But the first 15 minutes of the meeting, I spent going person to person to person to person, like, how are you doing today? How's the kids? How's the dogs? And I would have a personal conversation with them at least once a week and one at a time. And I think that's really important. Not only were we isolated in our houses and stuck in our houses, but you've lost your work family. So you've kind of lost touch with your community and your work family all at one time. And just to keep people sane, I felt it was very important that we maintained that. So I would strongly suggest to anybody who is considering a remote workforce that you take special efforts to connect with them on a personal level, not just that I'm going to have a meeting or we're going to talk about numbers. Talk personal stuff on those meetings, because I think it made a difference with my group.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure everybody will appreciate that, because that's probably something that most people don't focus on. They more focus on, the specific work pieces. Do you have a workflow environment? Do you have your equipment? Are you getting things done? Here's the changes in policies this week. Those sorts of things. Right. So certainly making sure that everybody stays connected at a personal level is important as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps it up. Thank you again very much for your time, Missy. We really appreciate it. And look forward to working with you in the future, too.
All righty.
So I hope you found that very informative. I think between the two guests, you got a little flair from kind of two different perspectives on working remote, both more focused on the KPI and the results, and then certainly I think Missy really brought it home, a theme that Lynn had hit on earlier in the presentation, and talking about really focusing on the people. The people have been greatly impacted, as everyone has, by this COVID. They still need to do their jobs, obviously, but they also still need to live their lives, and viewing them in that context, I think, is pretty important. Kind of the last thing is when you're evaluating remote workforce is finding the right partner for your solutions. You need to look at people who have extensive back office and process experience. Not just someone who's come new to the game, who has some whiz bang technology, because that's just not going to cut it. They need to have kind of a greater understanding. Whatever solutions are coming to the table, whatever partners you're looking at, the solutions need to be highly configurable, because particularly when you're discussing things in a remote environment, it has to be configurable, because every environment is going to be so different, and there's going to be great differences. Systems independence is very, very important. Again, that whatever partner you select is going to be able to interface and integrate with whatever systems you have, not just ERP systems, but there are going to be other communication systems and things that you need to integrate with. So having that flexibility is important. And then the obvious, a track record of success. People that have done this before, who have solutions that are, have a demonstrated track record of being able to not only solve problems for in-house environments, but have been able to adapt certainly into this new world that we live in. So to wrap things up, ICG's cloud-hosted comprehensive procure-to-pay solutions really are technology agnostic, as we've talked about, that can seamlessly integrate. And our goal really is to help you create that remote, automated, and standardized back office system that's optimized for whether it's going to be a remote, a hybrid, or even if you continue to go back to in-house processing operations. Our goal is to be able to accommodate that and help you reach their goals no matter what. We hope that you found this all informative and helpful in your day-to-day work. If you have any questions, unfortunately, we ran out of time to be able to field all the questions, but please do email them to us and we will get back to you. Just go ahead and send your questions to info@icgconsulting.com, and we will get back to you and respond as quickly as possible. Again, we thank you for your time and your patience, and we hope that you found this valuable. Have a great day and hope to talk to you all soon. Thank you.